as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day.
Became a nightmare. I'm gonna do a walkthrough.
Over 1,300 pieces of evidence were collected from the crime scene.
Scratch marks along the wall.
There was no doubt something paranormal was going on.
And for that exact reason, I'll continue my research to drive away the darkness.
Welcome to ASAP Radio. My name is Ben Robison.
And I'm Nicole Katsanis.
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Been busy, as you know. Been really caught up with a lot of things, and we're going to kind of touch base on that here in a minute. But before we do that, kind of introduce the guests that we're going to end up having on the show here in a bit. Tonight we're being joined by Phil Siracusa and Karissa Fleck. Phil, his whole story is pretty layered. He started out of the womb, from what I can garner here, with a demonic attachment. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I've kind of gathered.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll find out more tonight. But.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like he's battled with that off and on all his life. But then at some point in time, Karissa moved in with the Siracusa family and lived with them for
about 4 months.
Yeah, 4 months.
Yeah,
so,
I think the team she's with kind of took that case on, and from what I read, like, she had some stuff happen to her before she took on the case, but then kind of had some not so savory stuff happen, and moved in with them and kind of took notes and everything of what was going on, and now they have 2 books out.
That's pretty crazy too, if you think about it. Like, I mean, that's pretty dedicated from a research perspective to live with them. Again, we don't know the specifics here,
right.
But assuming, the client said, hey, we need your help, and the investigator says, all right, let me move in. That's really, getting involved.
Yeah.
Is very intrusive. So looking forward to hearing their side of the story. But you were saying that Phil has wrote 2 books?
Yeah, he's written 2 books. The first one is called The Horsefly Chronicles, A Demonic Haunting.
Nice.
And then the second one is called The Curse of the Horsefly Chronicle, a demonic haunting investigated by Karissa Fleck, Sean Austin, Melissa and Jeff Leeper, and Scott Gerhardt.
Wow.
I hope I said all those last names right.
Me too, because, they're going to come after us.
Probably.
So that's, who the guests we're going to have on here in a bit. For right now, though, it's time for you and I to kind of recap a bit and talk about some of the things we've been up to. If we were to kind of flash backwards here a little bit in time, some months ago, we took on a case that was referred to us by Oregon Paranormal. They were really busy at the time, and they got the message from the client, and at that time, they were just too busy to be able to take on another case. And so they reached out to ASAP. We took a look at the case. It seemed like there was a pretty long history. So ended up even being some experiences that went like into the other states, I guess.
Yeah.
You'll notice I'm trying to be very generic here because I don't want to divulge our client's information. That's very sacred to us. But that aside, the client essentially didn't know if, one, they were being haunted by a demon or were just cursed of sorts. So this was a different case because it wasn't like we were working on a haunted home.
Right.
And that made it kind of a different dynamic. So investigating a person, being cursed or haunted, attached by some malevolent or demonic entity, that was kind of new in this department for us. So
yeah, it was kind of cool though.
It was a big learning experience. I think we surrounded ourselves with some great people. We brought in Oregon Paranormal Pack, which was explicitly James Warren from OPP, and then we brought in Ellen Almendinger, as well as William Becker. And what they did, well, why don't you go ahead and kind of explain what their function was?
Okay. Well, they kind of came in to give us consulting help on what to do with this, and we kind of came up with this plan of helping her remotely, since everybody's all over the place. We kind of did a remote session with her, where James and Ellen and William and I and Ben, we kind of all sent our positive energy her way,
Right.
trying to help her, trying to clear off anything that was attached to her, kind of try and figure out what might be going on with her. And I think it was pretty fascinating myself.
It was actually. I garnered a lot from that whole experience, working with the likes of James and Ellen. It was amazing too, seeing their skills. And what I like about these people is there's no egos there. They are really doing what they can to help somebody, and that's the utmost important thing to them. And even I think this is hard for a lot of people, especially because we're so judgmental naturally that, when somebody says, I have a gift, I'm a psychic or a clairvoyant or, clairsentient and so on and so forth, whatever their ability is, because it's not something science can wrap itself around, or it's not a tangible thing that we can grab a hold of or really like measure and document in some kind of like value of sorts. Even a grounded, very, just what's the word I'm looking for? I'm really struggling with that. Like, somebody who's just a humble person, they even are surprised sometimes at the outcome. And that's the beauty of this, is like seeing things come out of the woodwork, or seeing them cross-reference each other and cross-validate each other, and not even know that they've done that, because they're, 2 different or 3 different entities involved in this whole thing.
Right. I thought it was really cool because Ben had it set up where he could see the client. So to hear kind of what other people were doing at the time, and if there was any physical reaction on her end, because Ben could see, like just how everything kind of clicked in a way, and it made you, or like afterwards we all came back and told what we saw or felt or whatever, and just a lot of things matched up, and it was awesome, I thought. And I have to give mad props to James and William and Ellen, because they not only helped us with our client, they helped me. It was my first time ever doing anything like that, and they were very supportive and welcoming and helpful to me. I was able to talk to them about some stuff after, and they kind of gave me some guidance on that. I mean,
even
awesome.
that, and that's a huge thing, especially for you personally. What I liked also is the camaraderie, how well we worked as a team, how continuative we were. So that being said, they really helped us in the respect of when the challenges rose with this case. We had to collectively work together and see past certain elements or dynamics that were holding us, back, or almost thwarting our abilities to assist.
Yeah, there's some boulders in there.
Yeah, and so, again, we're trying to be very generic, but all in all, that was an amazing experience to work with those people. There's no doubt in my mind that you and I would love to work with them again, and will, so. After that, I went out on an expedition with another colleague of mine to the Gifford Pinchot National Forest to scout out some areas, out in the forest for like maybe a future Bigfoot hunt. And the colleague that joined me is Brent Leslie. He's a wildlife biology major from OSU here in Oregon. And Brent's just a really laid-back, calm guy, very, knowledged. He's been spending a lot of time learning about these things, and this was right up his alley of wanting to jump in and get involved in something like this. So we both headed out, and I had been studying via Google Maps areas of the Gifford Pinchot, and I finally found an area I thought looked pretty ideal in my, best judgment. So I mapped out those coordinates, threw them in the GPS, and we took off. And we ended up about 50 miles deep inside the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. But we saw, all sorts of, signs of bear. The scat was, very obvious. They really like to be taking a crap on the road. Very interesting. And speaking of the road was really nice for a long time and then got very narrow and kind of, just rugged. And so we had to really slow things down, and that really delayed us getting to our site, the destination ultimately. But when we got roughly about 5 minutes away, Brent heard a deep, gunshot echo. So like a high caliber rifle, right? Mm-hmm. And we stopped and we listened, and sure enough, we start hearing lower caliber rifles firing off, like 22s. We then honked the horn, and before we know it, the shots started getting directed right at us.
That's not cool.
No, it was very scary. I threw it in reverse, took off down the road, jacked up your ride doing so. Yeah. All in all, it was a bad, situation to stumble across. What we kind of theorized was maybe it was some kind of illegal grow, or maybe even some kind of remote meth lab going on out there. Mm-hmm. But the first shot, the higher caliber one, was meant to probably warn us, and we didn't know it and hear it soon enough, and we stopped. And by the time we stopped, we were probably in danger zone there, and that's when they started firing off like 22s to really instill some fear, and we could hear the bullets whizzing right by us and everything. It was really crazy. So,
well, what worries me is that it was Bigfoot, and now Bigfoot's armed.
Bigfoot's packing heat.
And you still can't see him.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of creepy. But we ended up, handing over the GPS coordinates to the local law, enforcement, and whether they found anything or not, I don't know. I just don't want people getting shot at for no reason. We were out there trying to threaten your grow operation or your meth, so don't try to get all Heisenberg on my ass and shit. But
well, first I want to say that I'm glad you guys are safe. I want to say that I'm glad my car is safe. Didn't get shot. And if you are listening to this podcast, whoever you are shooting at my honey and my car, you owe me a paint job. So
yeah.
You can call us. Thank you.
Yeah, please do. All right, so the next thing we are doing right now currently is we're working on a case. Mm-hmm. Again, we can't really divulge specifics, but to just give you kind of an update, we're going to do a complete overnight, not just where we're there for several hours and set up and tear down and then go home and sleep in our own beds. We're literally going to stay the whole night over, but we're going to stay up that whole time.
I thought we got to go to sleep.
Yeah, you are dead wrong. But we are bringing one individual with us because ASAP, is comprised of me and Nicole. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to bring another individual with us, somebody we hadn't worked with, essentially. And so we ended up choosing Kayla Ohala. I can't say her name for nothing.
I think it's Ohala.
Ohala.
I think. And if not, correct us on Saturday.
Yeah, correct us. But Kayla's going to join us. We're looking forward to that. And yeah, stay tuned for our next podcast. We'll kind of give you the rundown on how that went down. Mm-hmm. So, and our next podcast will be with Mr. Jeff Davis.
Yay.
So yeah, that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Honey, why don't you kind of go into the last thing we've got going on that's actually coming up in the future?
Okay. Well, we have a couple of things in the future going on, but the big thing we want to talk about is that we are going to be at the 6th annual Ghost Conference in Port Gamble this year. I think it's actually the 6th annual Port Gamble Ghost Conference is what it's called.
Yep.
It is October 23rd through the 25th. It's a Friday through Sunday. It should be lots of fun. We're going to be out there for the whole thing. We are putting on a class this year. Our class is going to be called Paratools 101, How to Get the Most Out of Your Equipment. It's going to be pretty cool.
I think it will be.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about, and it's not going to just be a boring, like, here's a K2 meter, how do you use it? Like, we're not going to go over that kind of stuff.
The needle moves to the right.
Right, but it's going to be more along the lines of, how to get the most out of your money and how to use things in ways you might not have thought. And
really what it boils down to is we want to arm the people in that class with more knowledge to walk out of there and go, damn right, like I know how to, use the night vision feature.
Right.
I know what the word lux means. I know, where the antennas are positioned on certain things, or I understand how the attenuation of EMF works and blah, blah, blah.
Right,
so.
or even like, I never would have thought of doing that. Like, that's a
Exactly.
great tool to have in my arsenal.
Or a technique.
Right. So we'll be doing that. It's going to be on Saturday, October 24th at 6:30 p.m. You can come out and see us. If you want to check out more about the conference, see who else is speaking, because there's going to be some crazy speakers. It's going to be a really good conference. There's going to be classes, lectures, talks, investigations, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, very, very cool. Pete
can,
Orbia runs this deal, and he's a great guy, and there's no doubt. I mean, of course, he's been running this for several years now.
Yeah,
so.
it's the 6th annual.
Yeah.
But you can check him out on Facebook. If you just search for 2015 Port Gamble Ghost Conference, their page comes up. Or you can go to their website and check out more information and buy tickets to it. It's at portgamble.wix, it's wix.com/pt-gamble-paranormal.
All right. Cool.
Yep.
Well, anything else that you can think of? Or shall we just dive right in with Phil and Karissa?
Yeah, I think we should just jump into it.
Okay, well, stand by. We're going to bring them on here in a moment, and we will get into the whole Horsefly Chronicles.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, welcome back to ASEP Radio. This is Ben Robinson.
And this is Nicole Katsanis.
So tonight we have two special guests, actually. We have Phil Siracusa. I pronounced that right, correct?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And we have Karissa Fleck. Both of them are basically, their connection to each other is essentially due to the whole Horsefly Chronicles. And we're going to get into that a little bit here in a moment. But real quick, Phil, if you wouldn't mind maybe just giving us kind of a rundown of how this all started for you and what you believe is going on.
Okay, once again, this is Phil Siracusa. I'm the author of the Horsefly Chronicles, a true life demonic haunting. These dark attachments had followed me since I'm a child, and today I'm 47 years old, and it still resides with me today. Through my experiences, once we get into the story, I will talk about how I tried to make contact with these entities and what happened with the Ouija board and where I stand with the battle that I'm going against them.
Okay. All right. And now, Karissa, without obviously going into the meat of the whole thing, how did you kind of get drawn into this whole debacle of sorts?
Well, I kind of got forced into it by the entities, but I'm a psychic medium. I've been able to see and communicate with the dead since I was a child. and I decided to join a paranormal society. And I got called by my team founder, who just told me that it was a man who thought he was haunted. I knew nothing else about the case, and for the 3 weeks that were leading up to Phil's house, I was tormented in my own home before I ever stepped foot into that house.
Oh wow.
Wow.
So and you guys know without a doubt that the reason
Oh,
what
yes.
was tormenting you was the same as what was tormenting Phil.
Yes. The only way I can
Oh, you're cutting out.
describe it, people.
Karissa? Phil, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Looks like we might have lost Karissa. I guess while we're waiting for her to maybe, yeah, it shows that her call dropped. Maybe while we're waiting for her to come back, you can kind of, start into the whole story of, what took place. And because this, if I understand right, this started the second you were born.
Well, no, this actually started, again, the information that I'm going to give, some of it's hard to understand, believe, and digest, but this is a true life haunting that has followed me since childhood. But I remember being in heaven. While I did not die here in the physical world, that's where my story starts.
Okay.
So, if people ask me today, does heaven and hell actually exist? I could look at anybody and tell them the answer is yes, it does. I've been there. And how do I know that? Is because heaven is absolutely no pain at all. And our true families, I call them extended families, are there as well. And in heaven, I was with an angelic friend. The scenery and the colors and everything in heaven is 1,000 times greater than what you could see here in the physical world or feel or sense. All your
Right.
senses are rectified to a magnitude that you wouldn't comprehend here. And the last thing I remembered in heaven was that I was being circled by something dark with a friend of mine, an angelic friend. And she knew where I had to go, but I didn't. And she says, I will come back for you. And that was the last thing I remembered. And I was pulled in to darkness. As I was pulled into darkness, I took in pain, hurt, sorrow, and I lost all that love and happiness. And there's nothing you could see, and you smell sulfur. From
Wow.
there, I was being tortured by things that I could not see. Excuse me. And from that point, I opened my eyes in a spiritual world of hell. And hell, people ask me, what does it look like? It looks like the inside of a volcano with over 100 different levels. Each level has cubbies that we are put into as spiritual beings, being tortured. For whatever sins that were committed, Satan himself knows, the beast. He does
Right.
exist in the spiritual world. And demons do not walk around with horns and picks. See, Satan knows our fears. And what he does is he can make anything manifest in front of you as your fear in hell and torture you with that.
He basically dwells on the things that he knows absolutely terrify you and disturb you.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And what I started to know is that some of these people like myself were no longer in hell. Time does not exist in the spiritual world of heaven or hell. It feels like eternity, especially when you're being tortured. But when I started to see some of these beings not there anymore, it gave me restored faith. Faith that I would be pulled out of there one day. And that day came, where a crack of light came from far, far away, a pinhole of light, and it came slower and closer and slower and closer. And it started to consume me and pull me into it. And when it was pulling me into it, it's a vortex of energy that our spiritual body gets pulled into. And the best example I can give is that when people say they died and went to the light,
Mhm.
it's the reverse effect of being pulled out of darkness, out of hell.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
And when you go through this light, you shoot through it about, an example would be 100 miles an hour. You start to feel your your presence being put together and your conscience. And as that's happening, you start to take back all that love and peace and harmony, and you leave all that hurt, pain, and sorrow behind from hell. Now, what was following me in this transmission of light were these dark entities as well. These dark entities were not far behind me. I couldn't see them, but I could feel their presence. And then on September 16, 1967, a stormy Saturday, I opened my eyes here and I was born into the physical world in Staten Island.
Wow.
Now, people ask me, is this true? Is this all real? And the answer is yes. I can't be more clearer than that this story is all true. There's nothing made up. Some of it sounds impossible to believe, but the words that I say, I couldn't be more clearer that this is real. These
Sure.
things do
Right.
exist. And from childhood, any child through adolescence has nightmares. And I had nightmares. But then, as 4 or 5 years old, I had night tremors where I would wake up with cold sweats. And then the older I got, it felt like the older these dark attachments also got. And the fact that they were growing with me in the physical world. And
So they kind of paralleled you?
yes, and then
wow.
11, 12 years old, I started to see dark shadows. Now, at that age, you're growing up, you don't pay much attention to things. But when you start to see things at face value, you start to wonder what's happening.
Right.
And the older you become, the older and stronger these presence become as well. And I'll stop it right there to see if you have any questions before I actually continue on.
Well, I do. Why do you think that you were chosen for this?
That's a very good question. If I look back today, I was chosen because I think that it's my job to teach people that heaven and hell exist and that ghosts and demons is not fake or
Mhm.
something
A
out of a
figment.
storybook. These things are real.
Right.
And when people, and what's happening now is that I have some of the biggest people in paranormal coming to my home that did question my story starting a year ago. And I tell them, come here and investigate and see for yourself what's happening. And they
Mhm.
leave my home with, wow, this is real. This is really happening. They don't have any proof of heaven and hell, but they have proof that these entities are with me and they're here.
So,
Right.
do you think the entities are with you to keep you from talking about it, or they're just here to keep tormenting you because you left?
Both.
Both.
They
Okay.
both they want to be part of everything that I do. It's an
Mhm.
attachment.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you have an attachment, they don't want to leave your side. And people say, well, when you did the Ouija board, is the Ouija board have a lot of power? No, it's not the board. The Ouija board is nothing more than a tool in a shed. But it's the intent and the thought process that we have
Right.
to communicate with the other side that actually makes the Ouija board work the way it does.
Yeah, I
So,
think a lot of people overlook that because it's just like it can be argued that an EMF meter, or we'll even go, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, but the K2 meter, you can get your yes and no responses. You could even go through the alphabet and ask letters and things like that, and based on your yes and no established responses, get it. And essentially, it's another version of the Ouija board, but yet people don't really look at it like that. So I would totally align with you in the fact that it has everything to do with the intention and the use of it. Whereas the Ouija board isn't like an evil tool. It's just an instrument that's there for our disposal.
Yes, that's true. That's very true. And I've used the Ouija board for years back in the 90s, trying to communicate with what was following me. And that's exactly what it wanted. It's like a magnet, it draws you in. Some people that are psychic, sensitives, or mediums are like lighthouses to the spiritual world. I am not a psychic or a medium, but for some reason they're connected to me from either a past life or something that they don't want to leave. And knowing that some of these things come from hell, I wanted proof that this was a demonic case and not just an unfriendly spirit that
Right.
died and didn't cross over. And again, the evidence has come forward that this is real. These demonic entities are here, and they are next to me in the physical world. And what they do to let people know is, for a paranormal team, they'll put scratchy, screeching sounds into recordings. They'll show up in pictures where you see things that you can't explain but look demonic. You get touched, you get scratched, you get pulled, you feel a presence of oppression, and it drains you to the
And
fact
now,
that you don't know why you're alive.
right. Yeah, it's the whole oppression. Its intention is to make you miserable and uh, just think things that you would abnormally, never think and want to do. Now, with regard to the investigative end of it, Karissa, you're back on, correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Okay. Good. We lost you earlier, and I kind of wanted you to now it's a great segue back to what you were talking about with you coming into this, and then we can kind of blend both you and Phil, with the back narrative on everything that's gone on.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so I guess I'll just start where I left off before my phone cut off.
Okay.
So pretty much, I joined the paranormal field and I was on a couple cases, nothing too major, and I got a phone call from my team founder, William Cook, who told me that he had a case about a man who thought he was haunted. I didn't really think too much of it, to be honest with you. Like I just went about my day, and I just felt like after I got off the phone, I felt like something was watching me. And this was the first time in my life that I couldn't quite tell what was there. I'm used to being able to physically see things, or at least in my mind's eye. And it's like whatever was watching me had a veil over itself. But I just tried to brush it off and just went about my day. Little weird things were going on in my house, like the gas stove turning on and off, footsteps, whispers, out of character things. I remember seeing a few shadows out of the corners of my eye. But again, I just tried to brush it off, and I was just like, okay, like
Right.
whatever. I'm just gonna go about my day, and unfortunately, as the days progressed, I started having nightmares of being attacked by demonic entities. Now, I just want to make it very clear that I did not believe in the demonic until this case. A lot of people question me and say, "How do I know it's demonic?" And my response to that is, you go through what went through, and you would think the same thing. It was pure hell. Um, you know, I remember having demonic nightmares of like entities attacking me.
Right.
And I remember I actually have a journal, and I wrote down the exact dreams, and I described the entities that I was seeing in my dreams, and I'll get back to that later. And I just started feeling like whatever was around me was not good. At this point, I still wasn't convinced that it was demonic. I just felt like I was being eyed up.
Mhm.
Right.
And
That
not in
was
a good
until
way.
no, not in a good way whatsoever. And that was until I started getting physically attacked. I remember I was laying in bed. One of my cats was on my bed. When I'm not doing the paranormal, I rescue animals. And one of my cats was laying on my bed, and I saw a green orb with my eye. Now, when the orb got to the center of my ceiling, I got sexually assaulted. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, but I remember just jumping out of bed, and at this point, I had holy water in my bathroom, and it sounds so crazy, but I was, having these dreams and everything, so I had gone to a church, and I had gotten some holy water. And I remember just dumping it in the bathtub and jumping in it. Now, as soon as I jumped in it, I got bit and gashes appeared on my thigh. They appeared and disappeared, which I actually
Wow.
managed to get pictures of, thankfully. The app. And then after that, I remember getting out of the bathtub and just being hunched in a ball naked, just crying, rocking back and forth. I didn't know what was going on at this point. I wasn't sure if I was losing my mind or if this was actually happening. And I remember calling my team founder, and I was like, I have a problem. And I had told him what had happened. Now, give you at this point, I hadn't been eating, sleeping. I hadn't showered besides that
Right.
bath, because I just felt this whole time that I was being eyed up and it was just waiting to attack me, and it was like I was on edge, if that makes sense
Right.
whatsoever.
Mhm.
So I called him, and I don't think he believed me at first. He's a very scientific person. If he can't prove it, he doesn't believe it. So he had me come over his house because he could tell that I was a mess, and I think he wanted to kind of see for himself what was going on. So I showed up in
Right.
pajamas, unshowered, hadn't eaten, just looked like hell, literally. And I walked in the door, and he's like, Karissa, this isn't like you whatsoever. And I'm like, I know. And I kind of just told him a little bit more in detail what had been going on. And he told me, I was so out of it at this point, but he later told me that night he smelled sulfur throughout his entire house. He kept hearing banging coming from upstairs and would go and investigate, and nothing would be there. His animals were acting very strange, running away and hissing, and he actually captured some EVPs, and one of them being Her Soul Is Mine.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
That was when he contacted a medium on the team named Carrie, and she specializes in cleansings. She gave me a Native American cleansing that you had to shower. Now, I don't know what it's called. Cleansings really aren't my thing. They never have been. I'm not going to sit here and say I can do things that I can't do.
Right.
So I don't remember what it's called, but I remember showering with it and going home and finally feeling like it was over and I was okay.
Oh, that's good.
But it didn't really last too long. It was the night before I was going to Phil's house, and I was up in bed. It was like 3 a.m. I was still having trouble sleeping. I was still having some sort of dreams, not as much, but some. And I heard this chirping sound coming from outside my bedroom window. So I turned around and I saw this big black bird with red eyes that took up pretty much my whole bedroom window. Now, I live in an old farmhouse, so I have these huge, beautiful windows. It took up my entire window. The hair on my arm stood up, straight up, and I just remember running out of the room. I came back in, and it was gone. And that was the night before Phil's house. I almost didn't go to his house, but I ended up going because I just figured that they were trying to attack me for a reason, and they didn't want me to go there for a reason. So for that fact alone, I felt the need
And I'm
to go.
assuming, and I'm assuming at this point you didn't know the connection between what was going on with you and
well,
with
I kind of had
Phil?
an idea. I kind of had an idea before I even got there, because it started literally after I got the phone call.
Now, Phil, why don't you take it from there and kind of explain to us how Karissa and her the team she belongs to were sought out, I guess, or did
Sure.
you reach out to them and
Yes.
and how did that go about?
Sure. Me and my wife had decided that due to the paranormal activity that's happening in the home, we wanted answers. And a year and a half ago, I contacted Eastern Paranormal Society. I went on the internet, typed in paranormal groups in Pennsylvania, and I found them. And I was talking to this guy named Bill Cook, who's the founder, and we made arrangements for him to come to the home. And one step took the next step, and he came here at first by himself just to have a conversation, see if this was a real case. And after speaking for a couple of hours, he felt like he wanted to have the whole team here. And then a few months later, he reached out to me, and then that's when he grabbed Karissa and the rest of the team, made plans with them, and they came to this home. Now, I have 4 boys, and the last thing a family person wants is to live a haunted life, especially when you're raising children. So I was hoping that a paranormal team would come here and say, you know what, there's nothing here, get yourself checked out. It sounds funny, but maybe that's what I was expecting, and I would smile and say, great, I'll do that.
No,
But
I can understand
Yeah, I
that.
can appreciate that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I got the opposite news, worse than what I expected. And I was thrown back. When they came to the home, you could feel the negativity in the air before they stepped foot into the house that there was going to be a standoff between the energy, the dark energy here, and that paranormal team. And
Right.
I guess that's when Carissa was saying, like, they visit her before because it seems to me that dark entities will go after somebody if they have an intent to come here and help a family. The same intent as if when we use a Ouija board or we have a device to try to communicate with the spiritual world, they know that. So we're opening up that doorway, and now we're almost leaving it to the energies to say what they want to do. And
Right.
unfortunately, they knew that it was going to be a battle. So that's how
Yeah.
I got in touch with them, and they came here. And then I'm not too familiar with all paranormal equipment, but Carissa could fill in on that end exactly which device caught what. But
Okay.
the pictures and the audio that I heard, again, it's chilling to see and hear things that you think could be an imagination.
Well, the one question that I had kind of come into my mind when you were talking about this was, obviously this has been happening all your life, and um, I assume it reached some kind of, just horrible peak for you to have to reach out to a group, or was it just one of those things? It kind of was. I don't want to use the word placid, but just kind of almost plateaued out, and it was doable. I mean, what made you reach out to the group? I guess is ultimately what I'm
This
trying to
is
get at.
okay. This is what happened. I wrote a book, The Horsefly Chronicles. I wanted people to know about heaven and hell and my experiences with ghosts and demons, what I felt. And when I wrote that book, most of the time I would write that book in the basement, typing it up. And when I was doing that, something told me in my mind to play Indian drum beats. And I went on YouTube and I just typed in Indian drum beats. Why, I don't know. But
Right.
what I didn't realize is that I was going into a meditative state, and that when I was done typing paragraphs, I would look at it and say, I did this. And when
Wow.
that book was complete, again, I opened up a door that was halfway open, was wide open. It's as if I brought back the past into the physical world of all my encounters. And they knew it. And they wanted to know that I opened that door. And it was a Saturday morning, and I had to go to work. I woke up 5 o'clock in the morning. I was in the kitchen, and I see a dark shadow flying by. And I'm looking at it thinking it's the bulbs in the house or my eyes. So I blink my
Right.
eyes and I turn the lights off and turn them back on. This thing is, it's like the size of a basketball and it's flying back and forth. And
Hmm.
I started to feel this negativity around it. But I dismissed it. I went to work, and then from that point on, this thing would not leave me alone. And now it's to the point where it manifests itself so strong in this home that it actually affects other people. And this story and this haunting is not just about me, but what we're learning is that Carissa is being affected in her home, and other people are being affected in their homes by the same entities. And I didn't believe it at first. I thought that it would be silly to even think that two people could be affected by one entity or a couple of entities. But when I
Sure.
spoke to people over and over again, they're like, well, this is what's happening to me. And it was no longer a coincidence. It became fact that these energies and the feeling of oppression and the voice recordings are the same. So I'll stop right there once again and let Carissa pick up those pieces of
Well, I
what
have a
they actually
question real
taught.
real quick if you
Sure,
don't mind.
sure.
It's you said it's affecting other people who are trying to help you. Has it affected your wife and your kids at
Yes,
all?
yes.
Okay.
Over and over again. Yes.
Man.
It's
Yeah,
very
that's got to
hard
be.
to deal with things.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's got to be extremely taxing, not only on just the dynamics of your family, but just individually, each person, the duress that they go through, and something that you probably don't know, and again, this show isn't about me, so I'm just going to touch on this, but I actually was or attached by a demonic entity for several years as I was a child going into my early teens. So there's a lot of things that when you say it, and especially I can hear it in your voice, the conviction, it's so visceral and so vivid to you. It just rings a very deep, personal tone with me. So I can very much relate, and I can also empathize as to what you guys have gone through or are going through. Of course, mine didn't last nearly as long as yours, but Karissa, why don't you go ahead and jump in and talk about the investigative tactics and some of the things that you guys caught?
Okay. Like I said earlier before my phone cut off, as soon as I walked into the door, I knew that was the same energy. And I remember taking Phil aside and pretty much just telling him everything that had happened to me and everything that I had personally picked up on, down to the details of the entities that I believed were at the home. I remember his jaw just dropping. And he's like, "How do you know this stuff?" And I was just like, "Well," and I just went into this huge story. And, it was an instant connection to him and his family. But during the investigation, there was a room in the basement that none of the other mediums would go into. And I remember being like, whatever. They already came into my house. I'm going to go into their space.
Nice.
And I set up by myself. I set up in that room, and I was doing an EVP session while the other team was in the other parts of the house. And, I got some crazy EVPs. I got down to the entities' names, which I figured out on my own, and I got confirmation. I also got a lot of EVPs of them mocking my voice at a higher speed. I got confirmation that they visited me. I actually got a picture of an entity that I try to debunk. I might be a psychic medium, but I'm very scientific. And I do try to debunk myself all the time. And, I remember trying to debunk the picture and I couldn't, so I sent it to my friends that are specialists, and I'm like, "Can you debunk this picture for me? I want to know if I'm matrixing it." And they couldn't do it either.
So they were struggling with trying to find out.
The more they tried to debunk it, the clearer the image got of the demonic entity.
Okay. So
it was an intense investigation, and I remember at the end of the night we were going over everything with the family, doing a quick spirit box session where we got a bunch of hits as well, and we were just going over everything with the family, and I started to feel ill. I excused myself to the bathroom, and when I looked in the mirror, my eyes were turning black. I walked out. I didn't say anything, and then our medium on the team grabbed me and said, "We need to get you out of this house now." She sat me on the curb and started cleansing me, and while she was cleansing me, the van light in Phil's car turned on. It was as if they were watching.
They were trying to indicate that they were around?
Yeah, and I drove home with my team founder. I didn't drive to the house. He doesn't really like to tell me too many details of anything. Like, when I say I go in blind to a case, I go in blind. I'll know, like, one or two things, and that's it. And we were driving back to his house, and the gas light came on, and the car it was just filled. It started to reek of gasoline. It was the weirdest thing in the world. And I remember we just tried to ignore it and just drive home, We got in, and it was about, I guess, it was really late in the morning. We got in, and we were having some wine, because I really needed wine at that point. And all of a sudden,
I don't blame you.
Yeah, there was a huge knock at the inside of the door. Now, I told him not to answer the door, but he did anyway, and the smell of sulfur came into the house.
Right.
And that was my first introduction onto the Horsefly Chronicles. I vowed that I would never step foot back in that house again. I was ready to leave the paranormal world. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I was ready to leave the paranormal in general after that experience. And then Phil's wife, Julia, contacted me on Facebook, and we started building a friendship and connection. And I noticed that they were having a really hard time proving this haunting to be real. And I knew from my personal experiences that it was very, very, very real. So, I started coming over to the house again slowly. It took me a while to actually step foot into that door, but I slowly started coming over, and I built a connection with the whole family to the point where I was asked to move in and document the haunting, and I agreed.
Wow.
You've got some balls, girl.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we brought you guys on, and I was thinking, holy shit, that's some serious dedication. I'm a very dedicated researcher. I've spent the night over at homes. We're getting ready to do that ourselves this weekend for an investigation. But to actually move in and kind of be the resident, psychic medium researcher.
That's what I was.
Yeah, that's pretty badass and diehard. And also, it without, making light of the situation, it tells you to what degree, the Syracusas had gotten to need that kind of assistance, something, somebody there to help validate.
It helped me as well. Living in a demonic haunting, I fully think that I am now fully prepared to help anyone. I fully went through the oppression. It's like the house has a magnet to you and you just don't want to leave it. And that's the only way I can describe it. But from my experiences and living there for 4 months, I feel that I've learned a lot in this field in such a short amount of time. And as weird as it sounds, I'm blessed. I couldn't have asked for a better learning experience. And I do hope that me living there and bringing in people in the paranormal field, through my research and evidence, really helped the family at the end of the day.
Right. And it kind of sends the message of, you can't scare me away, I'm coming back, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think in a way it takes some power away from whatever's there.
Yeah, and it also it's something I've been teaching people for many, many years is that, as a paranormal researcher, when you go into somebody's home, whether or not it's demonic, just an old crotchety spirit, or just a spirit in general that's, scaring the client, or their family, is that we're there kind of as a support group, the paranormal research field. And for us to come in there and stand by your side and kind of take that uniform stance, that's a big, big piece. And Phil, I'm sure you could probably speak to that as to how it impacted probably in a positive way, though I'm sure knowing demonic entities, there was some rebuttal, for lack of a better word, as to when they were done with, their thing and left. Sometimes they bucked back up and kind of let you know, hey, we don't like you doing that.
Yeah, that's true. These entities are always one step ahead. I don't like to give them credit, but they are. And they know who's coming before they come to try to rescue the day or do an investigation. But when paranormal teams leave or psychics or mediums leave the home, it's the after effects. And the after effects are, there's multiple shadows. There's things that slowly move. There's the whisper in the air or the growl. I'm not going to tell you that the walls bleed because that's not true, or things fly across rooms and break. What I'm going to say is that the demonic oppression of negative energy goes through electronics a lot of the time. That it'll turn off TVs. Any kind of electronic device will not work right. And it feeds off of that. And any team that's come here, the batteries go down on camcorders and all their equipment, they have to keep changing batteries. So that's how it utilizes to gain strength to communicate with us, but also try to come after us in their own way.
Sure. Well, real quick, why don't we stop right there? We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of pick up from there and, ride the show on out from that point, okay?
Sounds good.
Great.
Okay, we'll be right back. welcome back to ASEP Radio. This is Ben Robinson.
And this is Nicole Katsanis.
So tonight we're sitting down and chatting with Phil Siracusa and Karissa Fleck regarding the Horsefly Chronicles, his tale of a demonic haunting that's not only impacted him, but it's impacted many other people, including his family and even some of his newly acquainted paranormal family, if you want to call it that, Karissa Fleck as well. So, but before we go into that, let's give a quick shout out, if we will.
Yeah, we need to give our shout out to Mike Smith at InfoSub. He hosts and puts up our little radio show for us so people can hear it. He is reachable via Facebook at the InfoSub, 2 words, the and InfoSub. And you can go online and listen to us and other radio stations at infosub.listentomyradio.com, and the 2 is the number 2. It's not spelled out.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah, so thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We always appreciate you doing that. Again, we will also throw this out there on Spreaker, iTunes, and Your Listen as well. So, anyways, back to what we were chatting about with you folks. Karissa, why don't you talk about, what happened after you left the Siracusa home?
Okay. Well, I lived there for 4 months, and after those 4 months, I had thought that, I really did document it well enough. I had, at this point, brought in some of the bigger names in the paranormal to help me. So I felt comfortable going back to my house and my life. Unfortunately, the entities that reside at Phil's house followed me home as well. And, it sounds crazy to be like, oh yeah, there's 2 people being affected by the same haunting, but it's true.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty insane, actually. Like even tonight, I keep noticing things out of the corner of my eyes. And you can ask me how I know it's connected. And again, it goes back to the same energy. It's on the same energy level as the stuff at Phil's house. And that's how I, notice spirits. Like I know when a new one's come in because of the different energy.
Right.
So that's interesting. We're actually this week filming for a TV show where they're going to be going to Phil's house and then they're going to go to mine and try to prove that the hauntings are connected.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
They've got their work cut out for them because that's just not the easiest thing. Again, I think it's one of those things like you were talking about. It's a very personal thing. There's not really a gadget out there that can go, aha, that's tied to the Siracusa.
Well, you would think that. However, I've gotten the names of the entities that are at Phil's house and the same voices recorded at my house as well.
Okay, so they're outright saying like in an EVP.
I actually have an EVP from my house that I got not that long ago that says horsefly.
Huh.
Wow.
So there is a definite connection, and it's pretty, they make themselves obvious to me because they know me at this point.
Right.
I mean, I lived there for 4 months. They know me. They're attached to me as well at this point now. As any paranormal investigator would be after living in a case like that for 4 months, I think Phil's going to touch on the deliverance that we had, and I actually went forth and had one as well alongside of him because of my connection to the case.
Sure. Now, I'm curious. I'm going to ask the same question. Why do you think they chose you? Because, obviously they've got Phil and they're wreaking havoc on his life. But even before you met Phil, they somehow, as he said, they're one step ahead. They're kind of, know all be all entities. Do you think they knew that this was going to happen and that they kind of just said, all right, we're going to jump on this?
I fully think that I got targeted from the beginning because they knew that I would play such an important role in this case.
Okay.
That's why I personally feel that I got targeted. Besides the other mediums on the team, it came after me. And I do think that it was because they know. And like Phil said, I hate to give them credit, however they do know things.
Right.
And as for them being attached to me now, it's simple. I'm a lighthouse myself, so entities and spirits good or bad, are attracted to my energy. And when you're living in a case for 4 months that's highly demonic, you're not going to walk away without any repercussions in your personal life. And unfortunately, they followed me home as well. And,
Yeah.
it's happened to about 70 people now. I think about
Oh
70
wow.
people have been involved in this case. And I want to say 9 out of 10 times something follows them home.
So it's almost as if you would have to put out a disclaimer saying, look, um, be aware that if you get involved in this case, you're not going to walk away unscathed.
I think at this point, unfortunately, everyone's well aware of that. I mean, there's
Yeah.
certain people that won't come near me with a 10-foot pole.
Sure.
There's people that claim to be demonologists in the field, and they're big names, and they would not come near this case.
Wow. So Phil, let's talk about that deliverance, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So me and my family, we got to the point where once again we want to try to remove these entities from the home so we could have a happy life, so we could wake up when the air is light. And just rewinding back November that just passed, I had a minister come here, um, a well-known minister, and he blessed the home and he said prayers in every room. Um, these entities play hide and seek. They were gone for 48 hours, and they
Yeah,
came
they
back.
knew.
They know, and they came back full force. Just when you think that it's going to be smooth sailing, it's not.
Right.
So Carissa was part of a team that she got involved with. It's a ministry, and there was like a group of 7 people, and they came here on a Saturday. And I do appreciate everyone's help coming to the home. And they did. The first thing they did was close the portals. They identified that there was portals in the basement of the home. They shut down 2 portals, so they say, and then they cleansed the home through speaking prayers in every room of the home as another person followed them with spray salt and water to every corner of the home and doorway. And the person behind them put crosses everywhere as they were walking through the home, every bedroom, every hallway, the stairs, so that everything was blessed. And they went outside the home in a counterclockwise motion to bless the home and the property as well. After
Okay.
that point, they started to do a deliverance to me and Carissa in the basement. Now, what I do remember as they were speaking in Latin is that something evil from within me started to get agitated to some of the words that were being read. And when that happened, I lost my train of thought and I just was not feeling myself, and I felt evilness now trying to fight with these people. At the same time that was happening, on my right side was Carissa also having a deliverance. It was 2 people at once now.
Right.
And I started to hear screams and growls coming from her. And that's the last I would remember of what happened in a long battle. But I heard it was ugly in the basement, what was happening.
Now
What I did,
the evilness that you said that was coming out of within you as they spoke certain words in Latin, do you
yes,
think it was a reaction, like there was the entity was within you and it was reacting to it, or was it just you that was reacting negatively?
the entity. And how you know the difference between us and an entity is that they think things that we don't think. And you feel this evilness starting to separate from the conscious mind of our thoughts. And it's as if these evil things have their own mind, the way they think, and you feel like you're being pulled forward, and something's pulling out of you, and you
Hmm.
you feel this as if you got punched in the stomach, and that's what I remembered. Um, when it was all said and done, which was about a 40-minute to an hour process of having an exorcism, then I felt light as a person, or I was fooled in feeling light as a person, that the darkness was gone. And they separated me from Carissa. They put me to another side of the basement, and they were still doing a deliverance on her, and I'm watching what she was going through. And did it work 100%? Unfortunately, it did not work 100% because it's as if when an evil entity hides, it also can make you feel like it's gone from within you.
Right.
And it's unique in the way it works, but it knows certain things on how to stay attached to us as a person. And I didn't know that up until days later when once again they felt like the home was blessed and the portals were shut and the home was good for a day
Yeah.
and a half. It was light. Once again, we woke up on a Sunday morning. My kids were playing in the living room and the air felt light and refreshed. And me and my wife looked at each other with tears and like, it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
Finally. But that Monday night came and I was in the room in the basement where I it's a room that nobody goes to. I just do my radio shows where it's a private room. And I seen this dark thing fly by. And I tried to dismiss it, knowing that the home was blessed. But the next morning, something whispered in my ear. And then a bell, the most bizarre thing, a bicycle bell, rings in the middle of the air in the living room when I was working out watching television. And I'm looking like, where's it coming from? And
Right.
here it goes again. It's letting me know we're not gone. We're back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's like I was.
on that.
It was like I was. No, that's okay. I was just gonna say it's like I was saying earlier about, you can do certain things and they'll kind of like nod their head like, okay, yeah, we'll give you that, and we'll back off for a moment, but we will be back. And that's clearly what was transpiring there.
Almost like they'll pacify you a bit to let you back off and then come back.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So things started picking back up again.
So things started picking back up where you start to see the dark shadows. You would walk back in the basement days later and feel the oppression. And my wife says, no, it's gone. It's gone. And I says, you need to come in the basement. It was a Tuesday night. And we were sitting on the couch. And she's like, I don't see anything, Phil. It's all in your head. And then all of a sudden, a toy dinosaur that you have to push the tail down on, it's not voice activated, goes off. And it does that dinosaur sound. And we look at each other like, okay, did somebody kick this thing? And then it goes off again. And my wife just shook her head and she's like, I'm out of here. And my older kids came down and I was like, look, what's happening here? And it's on YouTube, this video. It's a real video. There's nothing fake about it. It's at that Tuesday night, I'm communicating with these spirits and they're actually working through a toy on command of my voice. And they're not leaving. That's what they're telling us, not through words, but through their actions, that they're not going anywhere.
Right.
Right.
And it's sad. It's really sad because the Horsefly Chronicles, one of my missions is to teach people that this does exist. These things are real. But the other mission was to have a happy life and wake up one day with me and my family and we don't have to battle this anymore.
Right.
And it's not working. It's not working. So I decided to have still some of the best names in paranormal come here and investigate it because it's a live haunting. There has never been one person that can come to my home and say, it's not true, I debunked everything. It's not. I wish it was.
Yeah.
But over and over and over, people that don't even know each other. In fact, I try to trick some people and saying it's a good haunting. These are friendly ghosts. Until they get to the basement and realize that what's happening here. It's that oppression that takes them over. And they all say their equilibrium balance is off and they're dizzy and they feel like their energy is being drained. So up until today, I had a medium in my home that wanted to come here to see the case. And once again, the same exact things where she's like, "This is bad. This is really bad. What's happening here?" And I don't even know how you battle this because this thing does not identify itself. It won't tell a real name. And what she said today was something very unique that Carissa had said way back. This demon, and it is a demon, what it does, it's a shapeshifter in the sense that my son will say he sees a little boy Jack. My wife will see a girl. I would see a girl sometimes, and then other times you'd see a man. And not that you'd see it looking forward at something, it's like you see television in your mind that plays the image of what it wants you to see.
Right.
And last summer, my dog, at least I thought it was a dog, there was a shapeshifter outside, and I was frightened. And Carissa seen it another night, and she was frightened, and my son. So it plays on your fears when you least expect what's going to happen in the home.
Now, Phil, with regard to the way they look, is there anything off about the way these different shapes that are projected to you? Do they look like normal, like a little girl, or is there something off about her? Does it look like a dog, or is there something off about it?
There is a friendly ghost in the home, and her name is Sarah. That's a friendly ghost. That has nothing to do with the demonic tie. That's a whole separate thing and has nothing. But what this thing does, it mimics the other things that we know of, or animals that we have, or people.
Right.
And I captured it last summer. My wife was in the bathroom when I was running around the house taking pictures, just to see if I can catch her orbs or something. And what I did capture in the reflection of the mirror is my wife's back. At least I thought it was the back of my wife. And when you look at the picture, my wife's head and neck is one way, and this entity is facing a different way. And
okay, that's what I was wondering.
You don't know it until you look at the picture clearly, and you're like, "Oh wow, this is real." And I didn't know too much about shapeshifters. Carissa actually, when she was living on the case, she enlightened me what these things are and what it does. And it'll try to fool you in every way possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was obviously, in this case, great example, by the way. There was a disfigurement that took place, and that was what I was trying to get at, is something being off, because that's, from my research and my own personal experiences, there was, even when they would try to mimic something, I don't know if it's that they couldn't get it right, or it was, again, part of their whole master plan to let you know, yes, I may look like what you're used to seeing, or something you're familiar with, but there's also a part of it that's malformed or twisted and disfigured or completely off,
That's true. And, again, learning more. Every time somebody new comes here from the paranormal world, I learn another thing about what I'm dealing with. But this thing still does not identify itself. It just gives itself different names to different psychics, but it never reveals the truth of what it is.
Right. It's going to always be deceptive. Now, Carissa, you were saying though that you got names, but do you believe those were just fake names or?
No. I actually do believe that I got all of the names of the entities. I have said that, and I don't reveal what the names are, but other mediums and psychics have as well. I know dark entities try to disguise themselves, but when you're living there every day for 4 months and you've been on the case for a year and you have abilities, they can't hide themselves forever. Let's just say that.
Well, I don't even know if their intention is really to hide themselves from the people that they're victimizing. It's more of this whole cat and mouse, and they're just screwing with your mind.
Usually with demonic entities, they like to disguise themselves as friendly spirits first to try to get in. But for whatever reason, Like, as soon as I got involved in this, they never disguised themselves from me. I knew right away what they were. Did I believe in the demonic right away? No, I really didn't. It took a while. But I knew whatever it was not good. They did not come in as friendly, so to speak. And
Right.
a lot of people say the exact opposite. That they come in as friendly spirits or they disguise themselves as something they're not. And with me, for whatever reason, they pretty much started attacking me right off the bat.
Sure.
Well, I think once they started attacking you, probably to deter you, it was
Yeah.
too late then. They couldn't disguise themselves after that.
Yeah.
But I
that's a
wanted
good
to ask
point.
Karissa, how are you doing now after the church came out and
All
did
right.
what they did?
Yeah. I have respect for anyone in this field that will go out and try to help families. I just want to make that very clear.
Mhm.
I, however, had a completely different experience than Phil in the fact that I did not get those 48 hours of peace. While I was leaving the home after the deliverance on my way home, I had a 2012 Ford Focus. It was in perfect shape. Nothing was wrong with it. Right when I was down the street, my car started convulsing, literally shaking. And at first I was like, is my gas meter just off? Like, did I run out of gas? What is wrong? So I actually called Scott Gerhardt, who's an investigator on the case, and he's a mechanic as well. And he came out and tried to fix my car, and, he couldn't figure it out. I later come to find out that the transmission blew, now in a 2012 car. That was right after leaving the family's home. You can chalk that up as coincidence, because I did. I was just like, it's just coincidence, whatever. Until I started having problems in my house. Now, what happened with my house is that pipes were bursting in the basement. There was actually a gas leak. There was, poison chemicals coming out of the chimney. And I actually was on a first name basis with the construction workers. They were at my house for a total of 2 weeks every day. And every time they would fix something, something else was going wrong.
Wow, so
Yeah,
it sounds
so it was
like
like
it
a
made
chain
things
reaction.
kind of worse for you.
Yeah.
It definitely did make things worse for me right off the bat. It was a repercussion of having these entities and trying to remove them and trying to help the family. They were like, we'll show you.
Right.
And,
Right.
I'm not even supposed to talk about this, but I'm going to. A few days before the deliverance, a family member of mine's dog died, who was in perfect shape. She was completely healthy, young, and she had a heart attack in her sleep. Now, again, you can chalk that up to coincidence, but when I don't even tell my family what I'm about to be doing, and I get a phone call from someone in my family that has abilities as well, saying that her dog died and it's somehow connected to me, it's a little weird especially what I'm doing. Now, I remember talking to Ralph Sarchi. Excuse me. I remember talking to Ralph Sarchi right before the deliverance, and he told me that when they can't come after you for whatever reason, they will go after your loved ones, their animals. They love to go after animals, and they will also destroy your property. And those words really rang true to me after the deliverance when I was having my car problems, my house problems. On top of that, I was having personal life problems, and it just seemed like everything was targeting me. And also, for 2 weeks after deliverance, every night at 6 p.m., I started having horrible anxiety attacks, which is out of character for me, to the point that I had to take Benadryl.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it definitely sounds like it kind of snowballed on you.
Yeah.
And again, it's almost as if there's an agenda for each person, and no two agendas will be the same, I guess. These, they're wicked entities that have their wicked ways of, wreaking whatever havoc they can on people. So, where, Phil, where is things at right now, current day, with everything that's transpiring with this demonic attachment?
It's worse than ever. That's the first thing.
Wow.
And I ran out of ideas and thoughts. In fact, I was going to ask you, since you said you dealt with this yourself, how did you break away from it?
Well, mine was a series of things. I think honestly, it's like anything. There, let's take for example, you've got certain humans that are physically strong, and you got certain humans that are mentally strong, and let's say for all intents and purposes, let's say you get in a physical altercation with one of the two that I give you an example. One of them is going to be physically strong, but may run out of steam longer. The other one may be mentally strong, and you may be able to whoop on them a bit, but they're gonna stay in the fight and know how to mentally battle you. A demon, or at least the demon that I fought for several years, was both. The problem though was it's as I personally believe, and I think everybody's belief system has a big piece to do with their success or their failure in dealing with them, is it was just years and years of fighting back, and it was a matter of kind of like an endurance game. It's who's gonna last, who's gonna be the last man standing, and it for me, I didn't have this entity show up at least that I recall, in a friendly spirit type form. It showed up ugly, nasty, just everything it wanted me to be afraid of right from the get go, and it was that way until it essentially left. I I didn't get any help from a church. I didn't get any help from a paranormal group. There wasn't even really a such thing when I was a kid, at least as it is nowadays. And I think when I started going through puberty and other personal issues with, say, my temperament and things like that, I just became this very determined, strong-willed individual that kept fighting back until it finally said, "This is too much work," I think, and it moved on. That's kind of the easy way to go to explain it, without explaining each
Yes.
episode or interaction. But that's how I had dealt with it, whether or not it was my doing or some other entity or entities that interacted. I couldn't tell you that part. I'm just glad the thing's gone. And
That's
that went
great.
on for it went on for roughly, I would say, I don't know, 5-6 years. So, and it was a daily torment, thing.
So, I
But
do have another question. You're an investigator, correct?
correct.
One of the questions I have, and I'm sorry because I'm living in a very bad case, is that do you think that there's any ties between aliens and demons?
Potentially. I haven't seen enough of stuff either I've researched or firsthand come across to say that there's enough strong evidence. I do think my father is a longtime ufologist, and I know we've chatted on for many hours at length combined over the years about this kind of thing. He definitely feels that demons and angels and aliens have a very close tie to one another. Whereas I more lean to the idea that, well, here's what's even weirder yet. I'm agnostic, okay? I believe in a God. I believe in a devil or, hell and heaven. I use those words because we live in a Judeo-Christian society. Personally, though, I don't subscribe to any kind of religion. I was born and raised Roman Catholic, went through, a lot of the things a
Catechism.
kid does through the church. I don't even remember what they're called, but
Catechism.
yeah. But I have personally chose an agnostic life. But the thing is, I do believe that there are devils and there are angels, and I believe that they hate everything about us. They're there to make every effort we put into things like we're wearing 100 pounds more of weight, and every effort we make is like taking 1 foot forward and it's 2 steps back. And that's what they want to do because they want to dwindle you down and whittle you into this skeleton of a person, and essentially, in the long run, kill you. But I don't know that aliens are always a part of this whole thing, and it's because of the constant torture or the constant chaos that they're creating. I think an alien interaction can be misconstrued as maybe potentially a demonic one, but it's going to be usually a temporary, thing, like a one night issue or a week long thing or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The reason I bring it up is because last summer there was a time lapse here. We were in the living room, me, Carissa, and my son, watching the movie Signs, out of all movies,
Mhm.
because I like the movie. We all like it.
Love
With
that
Mel
movie.
Gibson. And we left the living room 11:30 to go walk into the kitchen, which is 3 seconds to walk into the kitchen. But it went from 11:30 to 1 a.m. Now we looked at each other, not understanding where the time went, and that's why I'm asking. Do you feel like maybe there's a tie here?
Well, I see exactly what you're talking about. You've lost time. Your whole family actually did in this case. I don't think that's outside of the scope of what demons can do. Again, they mimic a lot of things, and especially let's take your scenario. You guys were watching Signs, so it again is one step ahead. It's thinking about what it wants to do to screw with you and make your life hell, and therefore it's going to throw a new twist into the game and rob you of some time, and therefore make you venture down a path that maybe is a wild goose chase. But that's just my gut instinct. I
That's a good
can't
theory. Yeah.
I can't honestly say that was what happened, but just going off what my personal experiences were and what I went through, and just learning and hearing other people's stories throughout my whole life, that's exactly what they like doing. They like to fuck with you so much that you don't know what's up, you don't know what's down or left or right, and that's they love it. They feed on that.
You're right.
Now, you mentioned some of the big names that have come out and attempted to help. I assume, based upon the way you word that it was ended up being a fruitless effort on their end.
Well, there's evidence. They're identifying things that are happening here,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no resolve because there's only theory on how to resolve. But we tried different methods, me and my family, and
Right.
so we're kind of like, well, now what? Now I've lived in 7 locations, and as I talk about, these dark entities came with me. So everywhere I move, and I'm from Staten Island, New York, and I moved to New Jersey, and then I'm in PA. Wherever I go, they go. They cross the bodies
Mm-hmm.
of water, and they come. Within 6 months to a year, they're back into these homes in our
Right.
time. So, do I move again, or it doesn't make a difference at this point? So we're
Now,
trying to figure out how to do a breakaway from these entities, so that we can have peace of mind.
see, and that's where the dynamics are so different with your scenario versus, say, mine, because it was just me. And now here you are, a grown man, married man with children, and it's not only impacting you, it's also impacting, everybody that seems to get involved. Case in point being Carissa.
Yeah.
It's 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 a very different scenario. To me, this comes across like a very strong, I mean, a very, very strong either entity or entities
Mhm.
working together for their ultimate, cause. Um, and that's where getting people who are dedicated and will stick with you to your side for whatever length of time to go that marathon with you through the dark back into the light until these things are completely abolished. That's that's the hardest thing. Just like here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a horrible gaping void of real true demonologists, people who can deal with these kind of things and actually are not doing it just for a thrill or for like the wimpy little entities that they can read a write and they're gone. The ones that they have to stick around and keep following up, and there's a dedication and a commitment to those inflicted people, and that's the hardest part. Now, what it's as far as your resources out there in PA, yeah, I would hope you had a heck of a lot better resources, but it sounds like everybody you've brought out there might be able to capture some evidence of it, but as far as ridding this, demon or demons, it's been to no avail.
Yes, that's true.
Well,
So
the best thing you can do,
ongoing.
yeah, and I was going to say the best thing you can do is exactly what you're doing, is talking to people, spreading your story, having these books out there, coming onto the shows like this, so that way people, hear the story and hopefully a collective network will come together and somebody will step out or a group will be able to step out and aid you and everybody else to um, run these things away.
Yeah, that's my plan is to show the experience when you come here of what I'm battling, but also get information, and eventually someone's going to surface to the ground and help us remove
Right.
these dark entities.
Right. Well, I think we've kind of, come to end of this show. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity, real quick, if you would, provide any kind of information, links to where people can purchase the books, Facebook pages, websites, you name it, anything to help your cause and hopefully network you to anybody that can ultimately assist you with this. So, Phil, why don't you go ahead and start off?
Sure. First, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. You're a great
thank
host.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The book is on Amazon. It's called The Horsefly Chronicles, and there's a second book called The Curse of the Horsefly Chronicles. And the curse is paranormal teams that came forward to the home and tell their side of what happened here and their experience. I also like to say thank you to ASAP Entertainment. They're the agent that represents me to speak about this publicly in the future.
Okay. And is there like a Facebook page or a website or
Yes,
anything?
you can reach me at Philip Siracusa, the Horsefly Chronicles Facebook page.
Okay. All right. And Karissa, what about you?
I'm very simple. I'm just on Facebook under Karissa Fleck. I accept everyone that adds me, and that's about it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, again, we really want to thank you guys for taking the time. I know it's late out there on the East Coast, and we're very grateful for your time and your candor in talking about your experiences. They're very personal, very impacting, and we hope to put this show out in dedication to your struggles in hopes that in the long run you get the peace and happiness that you guys deserve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's why we talk about this, is to not only, get peace in our own lives, but to help people that might be going through something similar, we know we're not the only ones, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't come forward with their story because they're worried about being criticized. But, it's important for those people to hear other people's perspectives on a demonic haunting. Where demonic hauntings are real, they do affect families.
Yeah.
And just to let people know who might be feeling this, like, you're not alone.
Yep.
Exactly.
You're not crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Phil, and thank you, Karissa.
Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Wow. So we just got done chatting with Phil Siracusa and Karissa Fleck. What did you think?
That was pretty intense. Honestly, I didn't know what to quite expect. I had read some of the book or both of the books before, and I checked out the website and some stuff, and so I kind of had a little background of stuff. But man,
Yeah, it was. Here's the thing too. Like when you listen to both of them, I don't know them from hide or hair or anything. But you can tell their sincerity and their conviction, and I could just absolutely feel for them, knowing my own personal related type struggle when he talked and when Karissa talked, but I could relate on other levels too, where I know what it's like to be almost in that place where there's no hope, there's no out in this, and again, I don't know what the answer is going to be for Phil and his family and the people that are being impacted by this, because everything is a case by case, thing. Sure, there's common ground, and sure there's some, things that can be done that I did that will help them, or that other people have done, that are typical. But it really does depend on what they're fighting here.
Right, and how many, and because it doesn't sound like it's just one entity. It kind of can't be, but
it's hard for me to fathom that it would be one entity.
Right. I just hope that they find something to give them peace. And if there are any of our listeners out there want to try and tackle this and offer support, reach out to us, or you can reach out to them directly. We have a great community of people and helping each other. We talked about it even before we did this interview, with just working with James and Ellen and William, like the connection we have. And I think in the paranormal community, we have a great community of people who want to truly help people. So, hopefully they find some help.
And the big thing is that people who really put forth that effort.
Right.
But when you're dealing with something like this, it's a whole different ballgame. Yep. And there's no way to convey it in words. And it's something that you have to witness. And that's why, I get it. There's a lot of people that are out there like, well, there's no such thing as demons. And it's because they have never encountered something like this. So they have no starting point to even consider how nasty something like this could be.
Right.
Movies, that's it's just so glorified and just grossly exaggerated. This is more of an internal thing. It's not something that's going to be clouds forming together and dishes exactly just flying across a room. It's an internal battle, but there are physical elements to this. There's physical interaction as well. It's just not anything like Hollywood, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. I just wish for peace for everybody, because this has to be taxing, emotional, physical, everything. And I just hopefully something works and they can get rid of this.
Yep, I agree. Well, like we said, we're going to be chatting with Mr. Jeff Davis here soon, and looking forward to that. Actually, it's our re-recording of it. the first one ended up not his fault at all. Just the audio recording and in our kitchen, trying to do it a live, all three of us together did not work out. So we're going to try to attempt it a different way, very similar to what we're doing right now with, Phil and Karissa, and provide a better quality show, which, again, I want to do on behalf of our guest, in this case, Jeff Davis.
Right,
So
and he has a good story to tell. So
he does. And he might sing for us. Who knows?
Yeah, he did last time. That was nice.
All right, well, other than that, I think we are ready to call it a night, and thank you folks for tuning in and showing love. Thanks to everybody out there who supports us on a regular basis, and thanks to Mike Smith over at InfoSub as well.
Yes, thank you, and stay tuned for next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It was a nightmare.